Even though Ferrari stole all of the headlines after China due to their double disqualification, the biggest storyline in Formula 1 after the first two races has been Liam Lawson's terrible start at Red Bull. And now, in fairness to Lawson, he has lost a lot of track time in the Red Bull with reliability issues during preseason testing. In Australia, he missed all of FP3, and in China, given that it was a sprint, that limited the amount of practice that he could do. And for a driver who is the least experienced driver in the history of Red Bull, that really was a worst case scenario. Having said that, I don't think even the biggest of Lawson skeptics could have predicted how bad the start of the season would be, not just even relative to Max, but relative to the entire grid. In Australia, he qualified in 18th, over a second behind Max, and then in the race, not only did he have to start from the pit lane, but he also crashed out from the switch from dries to inters. In China for the sprint, he qualified in 20th and last, again over 8/10 behind Max, and then in the sprint, although he did manage to overtake a few cars, he still only managed to climb as high as 14th. In terms of qualifying for the race, once again he qualified in 20th and last on the grid, this time over 7/10 behind Max, and then for the race, even though he finished in 12th, he was 64.5 seconds behind Max on the track, and he was basically second to last, only beating Jack Doohan, because Yuki Tsunoda had a front wing failure and had to pit late on in the race. Bortoletto ended up in the gravel and had to pit on the opening lap, and Hulkenberg also picked up a huge amount of floor damage, meaning that again, Lawson basically finished only second to last. I think my biggest concern looking at the two Grand Prix that we have seen is that for both of the races, Lawson started from the pit lane. He clearly is still experimenting with different setups even within the same weekend, and for the Chinese Grand Prix, both Lawson and Horner admitted that the team went with a radically different setup for the race compared to qualifying, which yes made the car easier to drive, but it also made it a lot more uncompetitive. There is no doubt that the Red Bull is a tricky car to drive, but comparing it to the Sauber, which is literally throwing its drivers into the gravel on lap 1, there is just no way, regardless of how bad that Red Bull is, that Lawson should be outqualified by the Saubers. After qualifying, speculation started almost immediately that Lawson could even be dropped after the Japanese Grand Prix, and then after another underwhelming performance in the race, speculation actually got even worse in that Lawson might even be dropped before the Japanese Grand Prix. Despite Ferrari having their own nightmare to start the season, and Antonelli still improving race by race, so not quite getting the maximum out of his car as well, if nothing changes by the end of 2025, then there is a very realistic possibility that Red Bull could finish as low as 4th in the Constructors' Championship. The response from Christian Horner when he has been asked about Liam Lawson has basically been exactly what you'd expect. There's been a lot of stuttering, a lot of not really kind of answers, and a lot of non-responsiveness about how much time they're going to give him, with his exact words being that Formula 1 is a pressure business. Surprisingly, Max Verstappen has actually come out and defended Lawson, saying that Red Bull need to focus more on their car and less on their driver. But in terms of the technical aspect of why Lawson is struggling as much as he is in the car, especially in qualifying, there is 2 very good YouTube videos breaking his laps down in both sprint qualifying and also regular qualifying in China, and the simple fact is that he just doesn't have any confidence in that Red Bull. The problem starts right at the beginning of the corner where he isn't able to really attack the apex and turn the car into the apex to rotate it going through the corner. That then actually means that he's carrying too much speed out of the corner and running wide, specifically at turns 3 and 9. That then also means that he is off the ideal racing line, which is causing the front to slip, and all of these issues means that he doesn't have the confidence at the end of the corner to get onto the power as early as the other drivers because he doesn't want to unsettle the rear of the car. This is exactly what you get when you put a driver who has only done 11 races in Formula 1 and only done a couple of FP1s and a couple of test sessions in the Red Bull into a top seat for 2025 alongside Max Verstappen. Had they actually been fully committed to Liam Lawson and had undoubted trust that he is the man for the job, they could have given Lawson a lot more testing in 2024 with the older car testing programs, which would have had similar driving characteristics even to the 2025 car. Mercedes gave Antonelli over 10,000 kilometers in all of their older cars ahead of this season, and to be honest, That is a sign of just how much trust they had in him because they were committed to Antonelli from the very beginning. Red Bull weren't even sure who was going to be in that Red Bull alongside Max between Perez, Tsunoda, Ricciardo and Lawson, even up until the last race of the season. Had they been committed to Lawson from day one, instead of putting him in the Racing Bulls for last year, which is a totally alien car compared to the Red Bull in terms of driving characteristics, they would have been better off leaving Yuki and Daniel to finish the season and spent all of 2024 testing and acclimatizing Lawson to the characteristics of the current Red Bulls to best prepare him for a 2025 race seat. We know that Red Bull over the past couple of years have lost a lot of major people from their technical department, like Rob Marshall going to McLaren and of course Adrian Newey going to Aston Martin, and I don't think that it was a coincidence that Horner after the race made a point to say that they have a lot of very good people in their technical team. However, at the moment the technical team is struggling to eliminate the vices out of that Red Bull to make it more drivable for both of their drivers. And no one in Formula 1 talks more about other people's drivers than Helmut Marko, calling Bortoleto a B-rate driver going into the season, and then Bortoleto going on to outqualify Nico Hülkenberg in his first ever race is just a prime example. Despite how much they talk about other people's drivers, Helmut Marko and Christian Horner seem like they're clueless as to what succession plan they're going to have for a potential driver to go alongside Max, and also for a potential Max replacement. I actually feel really sorry for Liam Lawson because I know that he's been getting a huge amount of criticism online by the fans and the media, and I know that going into the season he was a little bit egotistical and really talking himself up, but I feel like to be at Red Bull and to be in Formula 1, you kind of have to have that almost blind sense of massive amount of confidence in yourself, but in reality I think that he has been set up to fail. If you look at the last 15 or so years, I think that Helmut Marko has only really had 3 drivers in Vettel, Ricciardo and Verstappen who came into Red Bull and actually had a sustained period of success. 3 drivers in 15 years is not exactly a very good hit rate in my opinion. When you look on the contrary at drivers like Carlos Sainz, Alex Albon and Pierre Gasly, all of them had to leave the Red Bull family to fulfill their true potential, and I think Lawson is a very similar driver. He is a very, very talented driver, I have no doubt about it. He has won races in multiple different championships, and once again I just feel like he has been set up to fail by how quickly he has been fast-tracked. It's clear that Red Bull are currently scrambling a little bit because at this moment in time they do not know how to solve their problems with their car, they just know how to replace their drivers. Japan is going to give Lawson a bit more of a normal Grand Prix weekend with more practice sessions, and on a track where Lawson has a lot of experience given that he's driven a lot around Suzuka in single-seaters and also in Super Formula. It is also a bit more of a traditional track that hopefully is going to help him build a bit of confidence and a bit of momentum with more experience. However, undoubtedly if there is still no improvement in Japan, if there is yet another Q1 elimination, and again if he fails to score points, then I think that Lawson being dropped after Japan is almost a guarantee off the back of what Red Bull have been saying. If Lawson is replaced, then Yuki Tsunoda is the obvious replacement. Yuki has had a great start to the season, and despite the fact that Racing Bulls have had a pretty good car in the midfield, that team has been unbelievably incompetent. He has been in a point-scoring opportunity in Australia before the team emulated Ferrari with a terrible strategy call that threw it all away. He was then in China yet again set to score points before a front wing failure. But if you look at Yuki in isolation, he has been doing this since early 2024. What really frustrates me is that it feels like only now Helmut Marko and Christian Horner are actually starting to talk Yuki up as a prospect when it's convenient for them. To me, that just shows a massive amount of disrespect in terms of how well Yuki has been driving for basically a year and a half now. And although I don't do this a lot on my channel because I try to be as unbiased as possible, as a fan of Yuki Tsunoda, as some of you know, I don't want to see him anywhere near that Red Bull. Even though I do think that he'll perform better than Lawson in the short term, I just don't see how he's going to magically sort out the fundamental issues that Red Bull have with their car, and in the long term, I think that it could destroy his own career. The problem for Yuki is that he doesn't have a lot of options. I would love to see him go to another team and start his career properly in the same way that Sainz did when he left Red Bull for McLaren. However, if Red Bull come calling over the next couple of races, Yuki basically can't say no. Just to show you what a desperate situation Red Bull are in, there is of course the inevitable Franco Colapinto rumors that have been circling about him potentially going to Racing Bulls to replace Yuki if he goes to Red Bull, which basically means that Liam Lawson is out of Formula 1 entirely. And now, what does that say about the environment that Red Bull creates for its drivers when in the space of a couple of months they go from promoting their driver to the top team, and then after 2 races they're not just ready to throw them out of their own teams, but out of Formula 1 entirely? And now, in my opinion, in terms of what I think that Red Bull should do, I think that they should stay with Liam Lawson. Dropping Lawson after 2 races is just going to start the cycle all over again with a different driver, and it doesn't solve the fundamental problems that they have. I think that publicly and privately, they need to back Liam Lawson right now to end the speculation in the media, and at least for a while, shift all of that speculation and all of these problems and focus it onto their car, which is going to take at least some of the pressure away from Lawson. If the car and Lawson then don't improve closer to the summer break, then I think a Tsunoda switch is more understandable. I'm pretty sure I've said this already about 100 times in this video, but get ready for 101. To me, the fault is completely on Helmut Marko and Christian Horner. They have failed to solve their car issues, which stem back to the beginning of last season. They have failed to develop, support and prepare the right driver for Red Bull long term, and it doesn't matter how bad Lawson performs. He is not a bad driver. He has won races in multiple championships throughout his career, and he jumped into a 2023 Formula 1 car mid-season in place of Daniel Ricciardo and immediately was competitive alongside Yuki. Red Bull only have themselves to blame for the situation that they have created, and with Horner and Marko continuing to be the main decision makers inside of the team, this team is either going to collapse when Max decides to leave, or things might never get any better if Horner and Marko continue to be there. Well, there you have it. If you did enjoy this video and want to support the channel, then don't forget to subscribe. That would be massively appreciated, and I'll see you in the next one.